Hey YouTube! I wanted to do a little astrology check-in today, focusing on the Jupiter transit that is happening in December. If you are relatively new to astrology or not really an astrology person, just to give you some context for this, the outer planets, and particularly Jupiter and Saturn, are useful to pay attention to in terms of their transits or how they move through the signs as they orbit, because they move slower than the inner planets. They tend to have sort of like more. Their effect is more noticeable because it stays for a while. So, like, Jupiter is going to hang out in the same sign for quite a bit of time, allowing us to spend some time working on that sign. Same thing for Saturn. I think a lot of astrologers don't, or think of the more outer planets like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto as more collective energies. Those are even longer cycles. But Jupiter and Saturn, you can really like relate to your personal chart. But it has a bigger effect or a longer term effect than Mars or Venus or Mercury, because they have shorter cycles, and so that energy is just not going to be like a focus point for as long. Jupiter specifically, we're talking about an expansive energy, an energy of expansion in whatever house Jupiter is in during its transit for you. And particularly, there might be, I guess, some emphasis at the time when Jupiter transits into a house or out of a house, or when it goes retrograde, if it shifts houses in the retrograde. So, also just random note, this is more advanced, I guess, but people use different house systems. So if you use what's called whole house, then your houses and signs line up exactly. So like the day that Jupiter transits, in this case from Sagittarius into Capricorn, would also be the day that it transits into houses, into a different house for you. For me, I use something called Placidus, which is a little offset, and so the houses are different sizes, and it means that the dates don't line up perfectly. So for me, this transition is actually happening a little later. If you use whole house system, it's happening for everybody at the beginning of December. For me, I haven't actually looked, but I think it's probably 3 or 4 weeks later that it actually moves houses. Not that important. The point is, so we're moving we're moving from Sagittarius into Capricorn. So from expanding whatever is in your Sagittarius to whatever house mostly lives around your Capricorn. And for me, those houses are the 6th and the 7th, respectively. So I've been spending some time with Jupiter in my 6th house, which is the house of health, wellness, daily routines. And when I first, knew that this transit was happening and that I was going to spend some time here, I think my initial thought about Jupiter was like, oh, great, it's expanding, so this is a chance to get things back, quote unquote, in order, to like improve my mental health, particularly around things like food and eating, my like relationship to body, which is actually pretty decent for somebody raised in this society, but it can always use some work. Particularly like my routines around health, so like my hygiene routines, my movement routines, my going to health practitioners routines, all of those things. I was thinking, right, yes, this is like the time to do this. And I think it has been a little disappointing in the sense that, I mean, of course, to be clear, like, Jupiter doesn't just do its thing on its own. Like, it's not going to magically, like, in my case, make me healthier. I have to do things to still make changes in my life, but the idea is that Jupiter would support that expansion. And what I found is that while there are some areas where things have improved a little bit for me, especially sort of at the end of this Jupiter in Sagittarius period, around, like, I've noticed that I am, with effort, like, getting better and better about kind of mindful eating and working with my emotional eating. By the way, I'm not going to go in super depth about food and eating, so if that is a trigger for you, sorry, I should have mentioned at the beginning, but it's just brief mentions. I'm not going to dig too deep into that. But anyway, so yeah, I've seen some incremental improvements, but the interesting thing is I have also noticed some the way that expansion doesn't necessarily, it's not always positive, or it doesn't necessarily mean like you quote unquote get better in the area. Because expansion can also mean expanded awareness. Like Jupiter can bring things into focus that you didn't notice or you were in denial about, or you were avoiding before. And a great example of this is, so Jupiter went into retrograde, and then we've had a couple of months with it direct. And all the astrologers that I've seen talking about this are like, yeah, like retrograde is a period to review, period to figure things out, not necessarily take a lot of action. And then as Jupiter goes direct, it's like your last chance. It's your couple of months to take those lessons and apply them and move them forward. And for me, I feel like what's actually happened is that, like, if I actually think about the period that Jupiter's been in my 6th house, it's been a lot of expanding awareness about health issues and learning like more about my fatigue and how it relates to other issues, and realizing like, oh my god, I might have this thing called dysautonomia, which is really an umbrella of things. And like a lot of what I'm actually focusing this last bit on is like trying to get doctor's appointments. Got a sleep study, I still can't get the damn results, so trying to get those, trying to find a neurologist to ask about dysautonomia. I did acupuncture for a while, so like trying to address things, but it's less that like my health is getting dramatically better, and it's more that I am aware of areas where there were problems. And it made me think a lot, if you're a tarot person, it made me think a lot about the sun card, because I think a lot of people interpret the sun at first as like joy, happy, it's light is good, but that's a binary that not only is white supremacist, but doesn't make a lot of sense, because actually light illuminates things, including things that are really painful and difficult. And I think Jupiter is very similar, where like it can expand your awareness and make you realize what you were trying to not think about and what you were trying to avoid. So that's just a reflection of like what the period has been like for me, and realizing that it's not necessarily that it's going to make everything better, but at the same time I think there's a bit of a note of hope in it, in the sense that it's not my last chance to like get healthy, or healthier. It might actually be that the expansion, that what Jupiter was supporting for me was awareness of things that I can then continue to work on in the future. Jupiter doesn't have to be in this sector for me to work on improving my health, for example. And as far as where Jupiter is going, this is kind of interesting, because for everyone, because Jupiter is moving into Capricorn, and Capricorn is where we've had Saturn and Pluto both sitting for a while. So we've had some sort of difficult, challenging energies in Capricorn. We've got Saturn sort of like pushing us to take responsibility, to dig in, to face challenges in whatever house we have that's on top of Capricorn. We have Pluto again pushing even deeper. Pluto is all about depth and also power, and thinking about where we do and don't have power in this zone. So it's a lot of sort of tough energy. But now we have Jupiter moving in to expand. And I think, I mean, like I said, Jupiter could be expanding our awareness of things, but I actually think that with Saturn and Pluto having been there for a while, we probably have actually confronted a fair amount in this zone already. Likely a lot of us have. And so my hope is that Jupiter coming here is actually a supportive energy to take some of the lessons we've learned and see what we can do differently, see what we can do here. For me, it's my 7th house. That is the zone of relationships. All kinds of relationships, but especially like longer term ones. So it could be romantic, but it could also be like coworkers I've had for a long time, friends I've had for a long time. And I've had, I would say, like some interesting stuff. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this one, but some interesting stuff around not necessarily relationships themselves, but how I think of myself as a social person or not, how I think of myself as in relationship to others, and how I think about relationships in my life and their importance, especially being somebody who is like introverted and has social anxiety and would prefer to just ignore that zone. I have felt the kind of being forced to examine some of that. And so I am cautiously hopeful to see what Jupiter brings to this area. Please do subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. Let me know in the comments if there's other kinds of astrology talk you would like. If you want to hear about different things. I actually think I'm going to be doing, pushed by a friend, I think I'm going to maybe do some like astrology 101 type content on this channel. You know, I'm not a professional or expert astrologer, but I have been told by a few people that the way I explain astrology is accessible, so I thought that might be something that's fun. So let me know if you're interested in that. And also let me know below, what houses have you been working with? What is in your Sagittarius and Capricorn? And if you have any questions about that. If you don't know, you can go to astro.com and go to horoscopes, and then natal chart ascendant is what it's called, I believe. This is a free, it's horoscopes, but it's actually a birth chart. So natal chart ascendant under horoscopes. You can get a free birth chart. You do need to know the time of your birth in order to get these houses. That, unfortunately, that's just required. If you don't know, you're not going to be able to, if you don't know your birth time, you're not going to be able to get this information. But if you do know that, you can plug it in, and it will pull up your chart, and you can just look for where, and you could choose the whole house or system. I mentioned Placidus. There's also some other options. Do whatever you want. The whole house might be good for beginners. And you're looking for the Capricorn and the Sagittarius symbol. Sagittarius is a little arrow with like a line, and then Capricorn's next to it. I have no idea how to describe Capricorn, but it would be one kind of this way, counterclockwise from Sagittarius. So look for those two symbols, and then see what number that segment is on your chart, 1 through 12, and that will tell you what house, and you can just look up Google for what those houses describe. But feel free to ask questions below if you're new to this and you would want some help interpreting it. All right, cool. Everybody have a great transit of Jupiter into Capricorn.